Alright, so continuing where we left off, I've kind of done a start job on this point here. That one doesn't have anything, and then I've got something going on with these. I'm just going to turn this off, just allow me just to see the distortion here. Let's start with an easy one. Let's say the cylinder piece here. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. The normal way is, say, do a cylindrical mapping, and that cylinder's kind of turned the wrong direction. So let's try this one more time. Let's go UV, cylindrical, and hit apply. Click on my little guy here. Let's see. Hold on. Okay, so this guy, UV, cylindrical, which brings up our gizmo. It's turned the wrong direction, but to fix it, click on this little icon here, which gives us this transform. Click on the ring here, which gives us this transform. Hold down J and drag till it snaps. And as you can see how we were dragging, it rotates, and then we end up with something that looks like this. Take these UVs, hit the unfold command, and it'll make a nice kind of little slinky piece like that. Or if you want to maintain it being straight, check one side, let it fan over, and then you can actually come in with rotate. Rotate it straight. However, either way will work, just depending upon what you're wanting to do. If I was wanting to put lines or other straight details into it, this might not work as well as another way, but I'm going to leave it this way because I think that should suffice. The other little guy down here, basic cylinder piece. I already have a very bad looking attempt here, so let's go to UV. We'll do another cylindrical. Grab my guy, click on the edge ring, hold down J, rotate it so that it comes out, and we have this. And that's going to be just about perfect. If you want to unfold it, it'll curve around. The only piece that I'm not really digging is this kind of edge here. I'd almost rather it be more on that side. So what I can do is give it the knife, and then take these two edges, moving so, flips to the other side. But either way, same basic idea. One thing to look at though on both these cases is turn your texture border edges. Let's take these two edges and let's sew them back together, and figure out, also make sure where your seam is. In this case, of where the object's going to be, that seam will be kind of pointed to the inside here. I don't think there's much chance of anyone seeing it, so I think that's probably a pretty good idea. If nothing else, you could rotate the object around or flip the seam to being on the bottom, or whichever side would work best. The only thing I might do here, I think I'm going to do here is, I really want to make sure this is stretched out. If we go and we hit this, you'll see that we have a lot of distortion going on. There's a few ways to do this. This might be the easiest. Let's see. Stretching it out that way. There we go. So now it has a little more free room. The alternative thing is we could pin it and do an unfold to get a little bit different look to it, but that should be, that's not. Let's check our checkerboard real quick. Yeah, I would say that's fairly good. Or again, you can go UVs, grab the top here, let's say, and unfold. While it turned everything red, you'll see that the UVs kind of straighten themselves out just a little bit. But I think this might just work pretty well. Get a little bit of shape change, but overall I think that works pretty well. All right, so let's head to this bottom detail piece here and do the same thing I've done before. Go to UV, we'll do a cylindrical map, which gives us this. Hit UV one more time and hit the unfold, and then we get a mess that looks like this. Okay, so what I tend to like to do on cylindrical shapes and rounded caps is kind of separate the two. So for an example here, let's just take we can either grab this edge or say this edge here, and I like putting most of my seams, if I have to have a seam on something like this, I like putting the seams again on the inside edges, simply because once you make an ambient occlusion pass or anything like that, dirt and all tends to accumulate, and so you have less chance of having a seam right along a specular highlight, and it tends to work out a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and snip that, go to shell, and move the bottom piece off. And then we have a bottom piece and a top piece. Go ahead, hit unfold one more time. And so now we have something that's looking a lot more even. As a matter of fact, I could probably come in with just these faces here and generate a new cylindrical map. There we go. And unfold it. Let's actually leave it this way. Reason being, what I want to have happen is, because these have nice even bevels, I want to keep it nice and straight across. Yes, there is some merit to having the even or more even consistency right across the sides here like this, as far as staying kind of true here, but at the same time I find, especially when texturing, maybe a little more distortion, but more parallel lines seems to work out a lot better. It's kind of a matter of personal choice. Neither one's gonna break things per se. It just kind of depends on your workflow, what you're using. So let's grab that. Let's go back to shell. Move this guy out of the way. That works pretty close to that. Stretch this out. Okay, and that's not doing quite what we want to do, so let's undo that. Pull that apart. There we go. Pull this down like that. And looks pretty happy. All right, looking at that, the way that's looking out, looks like this is still has a little bit of distortion to it. I don't know how fixable it will be, but again, luckily that's going to be kind of tucked in there. Anything, I'm going to match it more towards the length that it has going on. See how it turns kind of light white right there? So maybe something more like this would end up being kind of a good result. So again, now it's a nice square, and while it might not be, again, perfect along the lines of while it might not be perfect along the lines of fanning out along with the shape, by being vertical like this, it makes texturing a little easier. So what we now have is a little distortion going on with our end cuts, but the main part you're going to see on this outside here, everything stays nice and vertical, perfect, just about perfect squares going on, and that's something that we look for. All right, so next step, this guy. So right now, if we look and we turn on our border edges, you'll see that we have a seam that's running right along here that the cylinder created for us. What I want to do is take this seam, go ahead and move it and sew it, which makes something very ugly, and then unfold it at F, and now we get this thing that looks like a radial display. Okay, what that does is it basically makes like a dome kind of shape, and that's more what I'm looking for as far as not having a seam right across the bottom. The seam will be tucked in here, and that's more what, kind of what we're looking for insofar as the shape. That actually worked fairly well to get us a little better result, is this expand texture space. And so what that did was, as you can see, it kind of stretched everything here, or collapsed everything here, and then stretched everything in there. And if I go to my lasso command, just grab this guy and fold that back out that way. And in fact, let's go back to UV. Selection, shell, to rotate this just a little bit. And then take this line here, turn that off, and turn that off. Let's bring this down like that, and if we look, you have this line that's selected, and now if we look in our perspective view, that should be straight ahead. So let's align that back up, and then let's pin that, and now come back to our UVs and unfold it a little bit, and now we have a nice even consistency. It's actually pretty dang symmetrical going around. It also has a little distortion on either side. Maybe that's from where there's a mismeasured line or something, but that works pretty close. These should line up as well. So let's undo something a minute. Let's reverse back to here. Let's grab these and these. Sort of line them up. Line them up. And what I'm going to do here is just like we've done before with vert snaps, hold down the V, grab across the top, snap it to that center point, grab the side, snap to that center point, and so everything should be perfectly lined up, polygons. Let's pin this selection, and again, let's go to that, and then unfold. And now we're starting to really get a nice kind of radial pattern. It still wants to rotate it to the side. Both of these are a little rotated to the side, but go ahead and do polygons, unpin all, check our squares, and yeah, we definitely have some distortion going on where it resized things. So what I did is undid it, went back to this point here where we would want it, grab it all, and if I go under the options, let's turn off pack, which is usually something really great, and then hit apply. It'll straighten it but leave it positioned how we want it to be. So let's go ahead and straighten this guy back out again. There we go. It's about right. UV. Grab these guys. Push that out. Line it up. Looks pretty good. Alright, so take that, polygons, unpin all. Distortion wise, it's still red, but you know, it's solid red. And that's basically just yelling at us because it says, hey, there's not enough space here or whatever. If any of these rings are not quite the right size per se for what's looking at, or you think that the squares are too big or too small, what you can definitely do is come back in and almost with the edges, you can scale these in, scale these out, depending upon what may or may not work better. So you can adjust these in different ways. And some of this I'm not liking. It seems like it's getting a lot of distortion around that outside there. Go to UV. Let's pull this in. Kind of manually look at it real quick. So we know that's going to be distorted. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Make that a little more consistent. Even the size of those up, and then again go to UV, yeah, a little bigger, there we go, Z, and what I'm doing is I know these are going to be smallest. These here next to smallest, these a little larger, these are larger, and these are a little larger. But what I'm trying to do is get the squares, say, at the resolution of the bottom, if that's this, about the same number of squares tapering out. And then again, about the same number of squares kind of in the next area, about the same squares size. Then what happens is the textile density for these guys all stays about the same, meaning one set of pixels doesn't look any bigger than the next set of pixels, which is really what we're looking for here. So select this stuff, take my loop, deselect the inside, hit R, scale that outside in. So it's getting way too large. And something sort of like this. Now my distortion thing hates this with a passion, but you see how when I scale it all the way up, you see how it's got like a fade to it, almost like a gradient. That means that the textile density, while might be off, is at least relative to each other. So that's kind of what we're looking for. All right, so last but not least, we've got this top piece here. And now let's see what the cylinder will give us. Okay, so UV, cylindrical mapping, and that gives us this nice, wonderful shape right across the side here. Let's turn that distortion off for a minute. And we've got a wavy line, and then of course, you can see where all the UVs at the top really get slammed into one thing. So what I'm going to do is take this edge here, and just like the cap was on our bottom piece, I'm going to consider this almost like a globe shape. So I'll unwrap the UVs on it a little bit differently. And again, we have this inside cut. So this would be an area where it would be more in shadow. So go ahead and cut that. Go to UV, go to shell, click on that top section here. Hit W, pull it off. And so now we have our base body. And then we end our sides, and again, if we hit unfold, we're going to get a mess. One other thing to check on is figure out exactly where your seam is, and in this case it actually did where I wanted to. I wanted the seam to be right along the back, because when this wall sconce is against the wall, you're never really going to see the back end side of it. So we already have our box. I want to make sure that it's got UV. Select everything, polygons. Let's unpin all. And we have our waves. And so what I'm going to do is kind of line these things up. And again, depending on what you're doing with cylinders, this can work or not. It's one of those things you have to try. But so here's our object. Go to UVs, hit R, and let's just go ahead and stretch this out because I know we're going to need to. And we turn on again our UV. Shrink this thing down because we just really want it in one box, so I can kind of tell what's going on. All right. So moving this bottom, and let's see if we can get it pretty square. Select the next face, pull it, looking pretty square. For the next one, push it, pull it, looks kind of square. Same thing like that. And so all I'm doing is kind of tweaking the shapes a little bit, pulling each row, keeping them all nice. So I'm going to hit the fast forward button here a little bit, just about double speed. Main clue here is just to, again, keep adjusting, keep sliding, tweaking it up and down. The main thing you're going to be looking for is, again, as to keep your squares as square as possible. On the pie-shaped geometry, you're going to have some distortion. Again, with that, all you can do is kind of keep your proportions correct. That's the number one thing, is just keep your proportions correct. And so it takes a little bit of finagling, but in the end, you'll end up with a pretty solid textile density. Some are going to be a little bigger than others, and that's just going to be the nature of how the sizes work. Alternatively to this method, you can definitely go back and kind of cut in the undersides of the pieces, lay them out as multiple strips, Different strips will have different lengths, and that way you'll have more true geometry. Something else you can do is on the really wide sections, I could have grabbed those edges along the UVs and kind of scaled them out wide so that I wouldn't have a square shape anymore. I would have kind of a wavy shape, but it would be maybe a little more true to the shape, a little more true to the object. There we go. Just double check it. Close, not perfect, but close. A lot of these areas that looks like pieces of pie, they're going to have the most distortion. But as long as it stays banded as far as light and shade, I think it should work out pretty fine. Again, alternatively, you could turn it into a big fan, or you can cut these different sections off on the undersides and break them off into separate strips that would go around. As far as the top cap here, we kind of left alone. Shell U. Again, same thing we did at the beginning. Edge, 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 all the way around. Okay, moving so. Grab these UVs. So we'll unfold, check it one more time. Looks good up top. As we fade around the side, we end up with a lot of distortion down on this outer ring. And about the only thing we can do with that really is kind of work those down a little bit. Might have a little bit of luck with some of the unfold, but because we're compressing something but making it to the outside, you're going to end up with more distortion with that. But again, kind of the saving grace of it is going to be on the on the underside of the object. Something else could be is, instead of maybe this ring here, put your seam right across this. Would be another location for it. Then you could continue this section on up for a little bit different, kind of up here. All right, so with that being said, we now have everything textured, or I should say UVs on all of our objects, all different parts and pieces. But we also have a big, ugly UV mess. And so what we're going to do next is finish laying out our UVs so that they fit on our texture square.